Hey guys, what's up? This is Bret. Welcome to a special edition of Friday on the Turntable. Normally I focus on one particular record, give its history, background, what it means to me, favorite songs, etc. This week I'm talking about two books, in particular one new book that just came out from the same author. And these books are written for people just like you and I. If you're watching these videos, then you will appreciate what these books are about. They are about vinyl records, independent record stores, etc. Written by James P. Goss. The first book is entitled Vinyl Lives, and the newest one, called Vinyl Lives 2, just came out. Now, I don't remember, it was a few years ago, back towards the end of 2010, and I don't remember if I contacted James or if he contacted me through my blog. And anyways, what happened was he sent me his book that had just come out called Vinyl Lives, and I reviewed it for my blog. I did an interview with him, which I'll post a link for, and it was great. It was before I discovered the online vinyl community here on YouTube. It was hard connecting with other vinyl collectors. So when I discovered him, I was like, there's this whole little subculture of people that collect vinyl and are just as obsessed as I am, as are you guys. So this was the book that came out in 2010. This is Vinyl Lives. They're self-published on his Aventine Press. So he's a guy that does this for the love of it. I mean, he's not in it to make a ton of money off these books. I mean, a guy that travels around the country writing about tons of independent record stores, interviewing record collectors. It's a labor of love, and it's what me as an individual appreciates. It's what I end up spending most of my free time is spent in record stores, listening to music, etc. So anyways, this one came out in 2010, and it focuses, it has interviews with record store owners for 25 record stores in the U.S. Now, it has a history of kind of the rise of record stores in the earlier years, the fall, and now the resurgence that's happened over the last several years. So 25 different record stores. I'll give you a list of the record stores that are featured in there, because you guys watching are from all over the world and all over the United States. So it starts off with Academy Records in New York City. It has Amoeba, the ones in Berkeley, Hollywood, and San Francisco. Backbone Music in Delray Beach, Florida. Bop Street in Seattle. Cheapo in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Enterprise in Portland, Maine. Goner Records in Memphis. The Great Escape in Nashville. Independent Records in Colorado Springs. Louisiana Music Factory in New Orleans. Mr. Peabody in Chicago. Music Millennium in Portland. There's an interesting story about Music Millennium that he talks about in this book. And Garth Brooks, back, and I don't remember if it was in the early 90s, late 80s, he had made a statement about how back when the record companies were actually trying to get to make it kind of illegal for record stores to sell used product. So Garth Brooks had made a statement back then about how he didn't want his albums stocked anywhere in any stores where they were selling his products used. So Music Millennium in Portland actually gathered up all their Garth Brooks CDs and sent them all back in and never carried them. So that was a pretty interesting story. And I've actually been to that store. Out of the Past in Chicago, Radioactive in Fort Lauderdale, Records by Mail in Portland, Record Museum in Philadelphia, Record Recycler in Torrance, California, Relic Rack, Hackensack, New Jersey, Rhino Records in Los Angeles, Tower, Sacramento. So there are some interviews with the owner of Tower Records, and there's some interviews with owners of stores that are now closed down, which is kind of interesting as well. Twist and Shout in Denver, Village Music in Mill Valley, California, Vintage Vinyl in St. Louis, Waterloo in Austin, and Zigzag in New York City. So it's got a great intro in there, and like I said, it has features on every one of these record stores and several chapters on each one. It'll tell you if the store was closed down, because it's always interesting to hear about the history of especially an indie chain like Tower, and just kind of hear their rise and fall, what went wrong, and how they influenced other stores and stuff. So that was book one, and this one came out in 2010, and it's also interesting because For you guys out there, for those of you that are in places where there are record stores to go to, the record store is such an important part of our social community. You know, if you look at record stores, and they even he even talks about it specifically in here, record stores are, you know, countless amounts of husbands and wives met looking in the new arrival bin. Bands formed. You look at Michael Stipe met Peter Buck when Peter Buck was working at a record store. Billy Corgan and James Iha formed the Smashing Pumpkins after meeting in a record store. Jeff Tweedy worked at a record store. Tons of musicians, bands, all formed the bulletin board looking for a guitar player. It's kind of a mecca for the music and art community in general. So he does a great job of highlighting all of that. Let's see here. So yeah, 25 stores in that one. So I was really happy when James sent me an email and said that he has another one coming out, and as soon as it was ready, he sent it to me. This one is now, this is part 2. It is now up on Amazon. I just checked to see, and it sells for $15.50. Like I said, these are all independently produced, so it's no big, huge book publisher. It's a labor of love. So any support you can give James, I mean, it's great. He's someone just like you and I writing about something that we love. So Vinyl Lifts 2 features 16 more stores, and this one has a good little close to home here because it features Stinkweed's records and the owner Kimber Lanning. There's a whole chapter on her and her excellent store, which has been here since 1987. You guys have heard me talk about Stinkweed's before, so that is featured in the book. And in addition to that, there are nine additional chapters on various collectors, so it runs the gamut of various people and kinds of stuff that they collect. And there was one particular guy who's actually was a sound engineer for, coincidentally, I think it was Garth Brooks, and he collects tons and tons of Beatles stuff. And I think there's a portion where he's talking about his collection in here, and he actually said he has, I don't know what it is, something like 25,000 Beatles items in his collection. And I think, actually positive about this, he actually states that he has over 200 of the Beatles Butcher album covers. And those of you know, the Beatles Butcher covers are very rare. So why anyone would need 200 Beatles Butcher covers, I don't know. But if you're looking for them, maybe you can contact the guy in the book and see if he'll part with one. So we got 16 more record stores in this one, 9 different chapters on various collectors. And another interesting little tidbit, and I didn't even realize it until I was looking back on this one, but there is a feature, the last chapter is on a record store called ZZZ Records in Des Moines, Iowa. And a fellow vinyl community here, Blake H., had just did a little tour of Iowa record stores, and he actually stopped there, and he was talking so highly of it, and there's a great chapter in here. And I'm actually going to read a little portion of how ZZZ Records actually started in Des Moines. And Nate Neiswanger, sorry if that's how you pronounce it, but he founded it in 2000. And an interesting little story I'll read from here. It says, and this is from Nate, the owner, about 1996 or so, I went to a garage sale here in town. I don't even know I went to it. I was looking for something in particular. Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I go up this long drive, I get to the top, and the first thing I see are these 3 giant boxes of records just sitting in cardboard boxes, and there's no sign on them. There's this well-dressed lady standing to the side. I said, "Are you running the garage sale?" She said, "Yeah, I'm in charge of it." And I said, "Well, what do you want for these records?" Because I'm flipping through and I'm finding some pretty nice titles. R.E.M., Elvis Costello, The Clash, a lot of British punk. And she said, "Well, I want $1 for them." And I'm flipping through and I say, "Okay, $1 a piece?" And she goes, "No, $1 for everything. I just need to get these out of here." So it goes on to tell this story. So basically he just started accumulating all these records, and there was no little independent record store in town, and that's why ZZZ Records now exists in Des Moines, Iowa. So yeah. So if you're like me and you really enjoy reading about various stores so you can research for your next out-of-town trips, you know, between these 2 books, they have, you know, James has, you know, tons and tons of cities covered, so you can check them out, read about them, hear their history. It's a really fascinating whole subculture of record stores, collectors in the U.S., and I think he does a really good job featuring them. So this is Vinyl Lives 2, just released, I believe that actually this month in January. I'll show you the back cover there. And this one it's just over 250 pages long. I'm going to put a link down in the description box. I'll put a link to the interview that I did with him a couple years ago, along with purchase links for the books, and they are available through Amazon. And like I said, they're around $15. So definitely check them out, guys. I think you'll really dig them. I enjoyed both of them, and I read them really quickly. So, anyways, cheers, and I'll be back. I'll be back in a few days with some other posts. So, congratulations, James, on the books. Thank you very much. Really enjoyed them, and I'm sure a bunch of people here in the YouTube vinyl community are really going to dig it as well. So, cheers.